Today we are talking about one of the most unbelievable bank heists in American history. And honestly, it's a story that's so clumsy it feels less like a crime thriller and a lot more like a straight-up comedy.
So, let's just start with the number that gets this whole thing going. $17.3 million. We're talking all cash, stolen in a single night from an armored car company. I mean, this wasn't just some robbery. It was one of the biggest cash heists in the history of the United States.
But here's the thing you have to understand. This is not a story about criminal masterminds. No. This is the story of how a few very average, very unprepared people somehow pulled off this incredible crime, only to be taken down by their own just staggering incompetence.
So every big heist has an inside man, right? Well, for this one, meet David Gaunt. He was a supervisor at Loomis Fargo, and to put it mildly, he was completely fed up with his life.
I mean, just look at this contrast. This guy was a Gulf War veteran, working these grueling, 80-hour weeks for a little over $8 an hour. And yet every single day he was literally surrounded by mountains of untraceable cash. He was guarding a fortune he could never, ever dream of touching. And you know, that kind of thing, day after day, well, it can really start to mess with your head.
So Gaunt was this perfect storm of frustrated and lonely, which kind of made him the perfect target. And right on cue, a former coworker he had a thing for, Kelly Campbell, comes back into his life. She introduces him to her buddy Steve Chambers, a small-time crook who had some very big ideas. And just like that, a really terrible plan starts to come together.
The plan they came up with was supposed to be absolutely foolproof, but as you're about to see, it had one, pretty catastrophic flaw.
On paper, it sounds almost simple. David's the inside man, he uses his access, grabs the cash. Then he takes off to Mexico with just enough money to lay low, while Steve, the mastermind, squirrels away the rest of the fortune back in the States. Once the coast is clear, they all get back together and live rich forever. Easy, right? Well, here is the one tiny question that David Gaunt apparently never thought to ask himself. Once he's out of the country and Steve Chambers is sitting on almost $17 million in cash, what reason on earth would Steve have to ever give him a single dime? It's this one huge oversight that brings the whole thing crashing down. It just goes to show you how the promise of a big score can make you completely blind to the most obvious betrayal. So, with this deeply flawed plan ready to go, the big night arrived. It's October 4th, 1997, and it's time for David Gaunt to make his move.
And this is where you can really see just how amateur they were. David gets his trainee to go home, so he's got the vault to himself. He starts disabling cameras, but oops, in his nervousness, he completely misses a third one. So for the next 2 hours, as he's hauling millions of dollars, this one camera is just recording everything. And the best part? After he loads the van, he does this little victory dance. A moment of pure joy, perfectly preserved on tape for the FBI to enjoy later.
So the heist part actually worked, but the getaway? Well, the getaway was a complete disaster. Here's how this brilliant plan fell apart almost immediately.
The very next morning, the FBI basically had their prime suspect, without doing any real police work at all. Why? Well, think about it. When a vault with $17 million in it is found empty, and only one of the supervisors doesn't show up for work, you don't really need to be Sherlock Holmes to start connecting some dots.
So while David is hiding out in Mexico, Steve Chambers is supposed to be laying low, right? Keeping all that cash hidden? Nope, he did the exact opposite. I think the plan to wait until the heat dies down lasted maybe a couple of days before he and his wife went on an epic spending spree. A mansion, a brand new BMW, Rolex watches, and they were paying for all of it with giant stacks of $20 bills. I mean, they couldn't have been more obvious if they'd put up a billboard that said, "We did the heist."
And if that somehow wasn't enough, this is the moment that just sealed the deal. Steve's wife, Michelle, walks into their local bank to deposit yet another bag of cash, and she actually asked the teller, "How much money can you deposit before we have to report it to the feds?" It might just be the single dumbest question you could ever ask in that situation. The FBI was already suspicious, but now, yeah, they had him.
So the FBI starts tapping the Chambers phone. And sure enough, it confirmed that huge glaring flaw in the plan we talked about. They overheard Steve trying to hire a hitman to go find David Gaunt in Mexico and kill him. I mean, why share the money when you can just, get rid of the guy you owe it to?
Oh, and you want to hear about the getaway? They were in such a hurry and so totally overwhelmed by how much cash there was that they left over $3 million behind in the van.
And where did they ditch this van? In the woods, right next to the printing press where Steve Chambers worked. The level of carelessness is it's breathtaking.
So, with the FBI having basically everything they needed, it was only a matter of time. The arrests were made, but believe it or not, the story doesn't quite end there.
So what were the consequences? David Gant, the guy on the inside who took all the initial risk, he got 7 years in prison. Steve Chambers, the so-called mastermind who spent the money and tried to have his partner killed, he got 11 years.
And after all that trouble, look how little they actually got away with. They only managed to burn through about $2 million before they got caught. The FBI was so good they recovered about 88% of the stolen money. All that risk for a rich lifestyle that they only got to enjoy for a few months.
The whole story was just so bizarre, so full of these unbelievable mistakes that, of course, Hollywood had to make a movie about it. And in 2016, they did. It was a comedy, and they gave it the perfect title, Masterminds.
And here it is, the final, most perfect piece of irony in this whole story. David Gant, after he got out of prison, actually worked as a consultant on the movie about his own life, but he couldn't get paid for it. Not $1. You know why? Because legally any money he earned would have to go straight toward paying back the millions he was responsible for stealing, the millions he never even got to spend.
It just leaves you with this one question, right? Gant made one greedy decision that completely defined the rest of his life. He gambled everything for a fortune he never even saw, and all he got was a prison sentence, a huge debt, and a bizarre story that got turned into a movie. It really makes you wonder, what's that one moment of temptation really worth in the end?